Hello and welcome to Filmmates.
I'm Lief.
And I'm JJ.
Here at Filmmates, we make use of both our film degrees and our real-life industry experience to analyze popular movies and shows on a more technical level.
Think of us as your very own film major roommates who overanalyze every damn thing you put on the television and ruin all your favorite TV shows and movies.
Except, unlike most film majors, you can actually get us to shut up by hitting the pause button.
This week, we're looking at Spy Kids.
Spy Kids is a movie that I have a very fun and unique relationship with because it terrified me as a child very deeply. I still have vague nightmares about the fucking Fooglies. That deeply upset me as a child.
I don't know why. I just always realized that they weren't real, and it was solely because of the fact that Antonio Banderas is in the movie, and I already saw Zorro by the point that I watched this movie. And so I was just like, well, he can't be both Zorro and this random spy guy, so therefore...
But he can be turned into a Foogly! He can be turned into a Foogly, and that's scary! That is the scary part. Holy shit. Okay, why did they think that the TV show within the movie was something that children should actually watch?
Yeah, I don't quite get that because...
It's deeply upsetting nightmare fuel, and as a child, it scared me. It scared me so bad.
Here's the thing, you were more scared of that, but I was actually more frightened by the Thumb-Thumbs because of the fact that they had no faces, and therefore they had no feelings.
They were very emotive Thumb-Thumbs. I like the fact that they're called Thumb-Thumbs. Anyway, so
wait a minute, can we please talk about how the female Thumb-Thumb was not a thumb?
Wait, what?
You didn't realize? Like, those were too tiny to be thumbs.
Okay. Like, the female Thumb-Thumb was deeply upsetting to me for a lot of reasons. Mainly because it was curvy.
Every time I look at it, I remember when I used to wear, like, long nails, and I would, like, bump my nail into something, and that being just so painful. I couldn't imagine walking on those nails for some reason.
the click, clack, click, clack of the, oh my gosh.
Oh, remember, like, me when I was, like, would be typing, and you would be like, I can hear you in the other room. That's how loud they would be.
Oh my goodness, and the paint would chip constantly. Anyway, so now that
logistics of Thumb-Thumbs.
The logistics of Thumb-Thumbs. That's what we should call this, logistics of Thumb-Thumbs. We watched the movie, and we noticed a few things about it. So we decided to kind of break down what stood out to us the most on a technical level about this film. I want to talk about the story of Spy Kids, because I think it's actually pretty good. It held up surprisingly well. What I really love about the story and the writing in general is that it feels like it's coming out of the mind of a child. Like, there are certain things where, as an adult, I'm like, that doesn't make sense, or that's not logical. But if you look at it from a child's perspective, it does make sense. There is a logic to things.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's as long as you suspend a certain level of disbelief, then it works.
Yeah.
And there's also, like, just good... Like, there is, like, definitely, like, still a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Like, what is the Floop's purposes? And, like, what is this army for?
And, like, why is he also a children's show host? What career is this?
Why is the food always awful?
Oh, we'll get into the fucking food.
There's, like, definitely things like that. But the thing I think the story gets really, really well is pacing.
Yes.
Like, I feel like there's an issue in a lot of films where even a lot of kids' films, is where there's a lot of build-up to something, and it gets really boring.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, spy shows and spy movies, is that, like, there's a lot of setup, and then there's a cool impact, but for children, it's hard to get that build-up without it getting boring. So it's cool that they interjected all this build-up into the parents, like, getting taken and all this stuff so that it doesn't get stale or boring or, like, it honestly, like, by the time we got to, like, the last 15 minutes, I didn't even realize an hour passed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a short film, but it makes use of its time very well. And I liked a lot of the dialogue. Sometimes it got a little bit too cheesy, like Carmen's whole speech at the end where she's like, oh, no, we're doing this as a family because that's what family is all about. And I was, like, practically groaning.
I mean, they had lines like that, but then they also had gems like, you did that on purpose, you kamikaze.
Oh, my gosh.
Everything
that comes out of Floop and Minions' mouths is so fucking funny.
I honestly wonder if some of their stuff was improv because both of them are, like, pretty good actors. Like, Minion is played by the guy who is Monk.
Yeah, the guy who plays Monk. So he's got some serious comedy chops.
And so I wouldn't be shocked if,
And then Alan Cumming, of course.
Of course. I also just love the fact that Minion's name is Minion, but he's not really a minion.
His name isn't actually Minion. They mention what his name is at some point. Like,
but
his actual real name.
They still call him Mr. Minion.
Throughout the entire thing, they still call him Minion.
Even if he's not Minion, he's still Minion.
Which, it's so funny. Yeah, like, I liked a lot of the adult stuff. Like, a lot of the adult scenes I thought were very well written and well paced. I liked some of the dialogue writing that subtly hinted that the parents were not happy with the life that they were living.
Not even just dialogue, but also, like, you can see it in, like, the acting choices they made and, like, the cutting. Like, they had... The fact that they even had that little scene where, like, he daydreamed about fighting the guy showed everything that you needed to know about him.
Yeah, and the way she ended the story about her wedding, their wedding with... and then they were better off. They were better off. Instead of saying they lived happily ever after. That was a fun little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought the story and the writing were pretty good. On a whole for this kind of film. Some of it felt like a little bit easy on the character development side, especially with Junie, where it suddenly was like, oh, he was the heart the whole time, and he just easily convinces Floop to help him. I mean, I sort of bought it, but sometimes it was a little bit flimsy.
I mean, yeah, he did have to, like, change his... Like, it should have been more... Like, they should have made a little bit of backstory for Floop for that to work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know how Floop even got into children's television.
It feels like he was Floop's career path makes no sense, but that's... We'll ignore that because Alan Cumming's hilarious, but it makes no sense. Yeah, that goes right into the casting.
Do you know who Floop reminds me of a little bit, and I hate to say it, but the Johnny Depp, Willy Wonka?
No.
But only during that food scene where he has, like, the gross and awful, like, might be paint food. And, like, the bouncing...
plate? Okay, we'll have to talk about the bouncing plate, because that scene...
That haunts my dream.
But I thought that the casting was overall pretty, like, really good. The family looks like a family.
They also have, like, really good chemistry with each other.
Yeah.
Like, even, like, the kids have great chemistry with the parents.
Yeah.
Like, even they have great chemistry with the random uncle who's not their uncle.
Who's not their uncle. I'm not their uncle.
I love the fact that he had to take off his mustache to reveal that he's not the uncle.
And then literally the very next scene, he's putting it back on.
What was the purpose of the mustache?
The whole running gag with the guys in mustaches was actually kind of funny. Like, you could tell which scenes was Antonio Banderas' actual mustache and which scenes were a fake mustache, though.
I hate the mustache.
Anyway, I thought it was funny.
It's funny, but I just, like, looking at it makes me just go, wow.
And having Alan Cumming play Floop was just perfect. Because he brings that sort of energy. I did not like the casting of, like, the actual bad guy, the spy guy who is he working for? He's just a vague villain. Who is he working for?
Well, that's what I'm saying. What's the purpose of this army? What is their goal? We don't know. Also, I really hated the casting for the woman with a really bad wig.
Yeah,
that gets set on fire.
Like, those two villains were not... Like, those two actors were not very good. Like, they didn't strike the right balance between, like, hammy acting and, like, realistic acting, in my opinion.
They also didn't do anything with, like, the why are they villains? They just kind of are villains because they're villains and they're doing something bad.
Which, I think could fall into, like, the children's, it's a children's movie and it's from the logic of a child, so the bad guys are just bad guys. But I kind of wish I knew who these bad guys were, who they were working for.
Like, I'm guessing that the woman was part of OSS, and she had some sort of romantic interest in Minion, I guess.
Yeah, that was a weird little
Which
detail.
was kind of odd choice because it just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's just kind of...
It doesn't really serve a point besides, like, oh yeah, here's my chick. She had all of her hair burned off except some weird strands, and also she doesn't affect by... She was not affected by fire. She had fire blown in her face.
Fireproof woman, but not the wig.
Oh my god, she's Daenerys Targaryen.
Oh, JJ?
I'm just saying.
JJ, we're not doing Game of Thrones yet.
She's fireproof.
I did love the fact that they cast all of, like, the human minion guys who worked for the OSS, like, double-crossing lady, whatever the hell her name was. I loved how they were all cast to look like cast and then styled to look like fucking Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible.
Do you know what's great? I really like the acting of every single one of the brainless children.
Yes, they were all actually really good.
And they were all adorable.
They were all really cute. Terrifying when I was a child. Cute as an adult. Oh gosh, they were deeply terrifying as a child.
Now that I think on it, it is deeply terrifying. Their eyes look like cats when you take a photo of them, though.
Oh gosh. The production design on this film is very interesting, in my opinion.
I think there was a lot of, like, hits or misses in the production design. Like, I think they did a really, really stellar on, like, the set building and a lot of the world building, like, in the bedroom. But then there was, like, standout moments where I was just like, okay, I'll give it to you. Like, the no wart with the X over the wart. I'm like, that just... I guess it's cheesy, but, like, okay, I'll give it to you.
Here was my problem with the no wart bottle is everything else on the... Like, so at the beginning of the film, Junie and Carmen are getting ready for bed, and Carmen asks her mom to tell her a story, and that story that she tells is how she and their father met. And Junie, there's a bit in the scene where Junie's putting on medication for all of his warts that he has, which is like a character thing about him, that he has warts because he's a scared. It makes no sense. But like the bottle of wart medication just has like it's like a plain label with the only thing on it being the word wart with like a red X over it, like a circle and a cross out over it, like so it's no wart, and it's like nothing else on the countertop behind that bottle looks like that. They all look like bought props from like a CVS or a Walgreens.
Yeah, like they look like pretty standard, like what every American household would probably have in their bathroom.
So my problem with the wart bottle isn't it on its own. It's the fact that nothing else in that scene has that same cartoony
and that
logic.
makes it just like stand out even more.
Yeah,
in my opinion. But aside from the wart bottle, they had some like really cool like prop gems. Like when especially when you get to like the machete stuff.
Machete. Oh, I loved Machete's shop.
I loved. Okay, my two favorite things though is one, the random bowl of fingers.
When you first see Machete, and they come in and he's showing them the tiniest camera in the world. There's just like this glass bowl filled with like fake fingers.
I love the fact that just nobody's acknowledging it, and it's cool. But I also really like things like they have like a lightsaber dagger.
Yes.
Or like the super powerful glow sticks they have. I kind of really like that. I also love the fact that they have them cuddle up with a Hulu dancer.
They Indiana Jones it and replace the grail that is the map of Floop's castle with the hula dancer.
Which doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense, but it's very funny. Well, it's not very funny. It's just mildly funny, but I thought it was funny. How many times can I say the word funny?
As many times as you want, I'm guessing.
I don't have a funny limit? That's great.
But you gotta start interjecting with, like, goofy every once in a while.
Just so it's fresh.
So we have some differentiation of levels.
You tried that word. And I think you almost got it.
You have to just show a difference in these two.
Yeah.
Goofy is just like the extra level.
Yeah, goofy, silly.
Like everything involving Floop is goofy.
No, Floop is
Floop's television show is goofy. Also,
no, Floop's television show's terrifying. Floop's television show has secret agents who have been turned into fucking monsters, screaming in backwards for people to come save them. That's terrifying. And then there's
a man that help us, save us.
No, don't get that stuck in my head. And there's an eyeballs just floating around the background.
Yeah, that's the thing that always got me. And also the fact that how they shoot it defies all logic of film. Like the thumbs disappear. You find out they're all just somehow floating
in the virtual room because that's how green screen works.
I love the fact that they do use green and blue screen, so they can tell you that they know a slate about the industry. And there's like a little bit of texture in that room.
There's a joke in there somewhere about how bad the VFX are with correlating with what they apparently think, how they apparently think VFX works, but I just can't come up with it yet.
Oh my gosh.
I can barely even get that sentence
We'll
sound.
find one.
Yeah, so the production design, I liked a lot of it. I liked a lot of the wardrobe.
I enjoyed a lot of it, but then there's some things I was just like, what? And here's the thing. It has nothing to do with any of the actual human characters. I just really, really hate the onesies on the thumbs. They just make me deeply uncomfortable. They look like overgrown children.
They're wearing fingerless gloves, though. They're wearing fingerless gloves, JJ.
I just dislike it.
Spandex fingerless gloves on the thumbs, except for the female thumb who's wearing a nursing outfit. And that makes me very concerned about Robert Rodriguez. What is his fetish that he has a sentient hand in a nurse's costume? What is his fetish?
So he doesn't have a foot fetish. He's not Quentin Tarantino. He has a hand fetish.
He's just worked with oh my gosh, Sin City. We need to watch Sin City because that was co-directed by Quentin Tarantino.
No, it was not. Quentin Tarantino was just a guest director on this. What a guest director is doing on a movie, I have no idea.
Yeah, it was directed by Frank Miller, who's directed like only one other film called The Spirit, and also isn't a director. He's a comic book writer. And debatably an artist.
I mean, SimCity is basically a comic book.
Yeah, it's a motion comic book.
They shoot it like it's supposed to look like a comic book.
This is not a review of Sin City. I liked the colors that they put on people. I really liked the color palette that they chose. So for films, whenever you see a film, it's extremely designed. There should be no colors there that were not purposeful. And every film has a very set and defined color palette to it. And I really liked sort of the warm color palette that they had with like lots of earth tones, and then also like some reds and oranges with like the hints of like some green and a little bit of purple.
Yeah, and here's an interesting thing to think about is that the minion is the only character who does Minion, and the actual bad guy who wears the tan suit are the only people who are wearing white.
Yeah, and also
like pure white a lot. Like they're wearing very neutral tones, and everybody else is wearing a lot more color clothing. They like the mother and the daughter both wear red. Junie is wearing like red and purple, which is matching Floop's costume, which I think is a signal.
Yeah. That
like Floop isn't really that big of a bad guy because of the fact that he's wearing like these purples and like.
And how he and Junie are connected.
Yeah, I just didn't like the fact that I felt like the woman should have been wearing something like different, like blue or white too.
Yeah, because she was wearing red.
Because she was wearing red, and I thought that she just felt out of place with the other bad guys.
Yeah, I get that it was trying to do that classic femme fatale red dress, but it doesn't really work when their color logic has already been connecting those reds between Carmen and the mother.
And also in like Floop's, like certain parts of Floop's outfits, and so it kind of like, I was like, oh, well, it had an effect, and then it kind of ruined that effect a little bit.
But also you have the thumbs all be red as well.
But the thumbs aren't necessarily bad people. Like, they exist.
They're robots.
Yeah, like, they're Floop, so therefore Floop isn't bad, so therefore the thumbs technically are bad. The thing that gets me,
Which
is
also
the weird Star Trek costumes that these children are wearing.
Which also I think was a good indication that they weren't really Floop's idea before he says that the children were Minions' idea and not Floop's.
They kind of match Minions' aesthetic. And
when we say pure white, we don't actually mean pure white because it's very rare that you will ever see pure white on camera because it just doesn't read well. Usually it's like some sort of off-white. Like they had an off-white, white and gray.
Yeah, it was like a white, gray, and it was a very cool, like they are just on very cool tone side of the spectrum in my opinion, comparatively to the very warm tones of
the rest of the film.
The location as a whole was very warm toned.
Yeah.
And that's a very big part of it. I also loved the glove hand. But I don't think they introduced it very well.
Yeah.
I think it's funny, like, now that I look back on it.
Wait,
because of the glove.
Wait. I've stumbled upon something forbidden. It's not that Robert Rodriguez has a hand fetish. Floop has a hand fetish. He sits on a chair that's literally the shape of a hand.
Oh, Alan Cumming. I'm sorry I'm doing this to you.
I'm sorry, Alan Cumming. Cummings?
Who knows?
Nobody can know actually what his name is. I'm pretty sure it's Alan Cummings, which is... Yep, it's Alan Cumming. It's Alan Cumming. So yeah, I'm sorry, Alan Cumming, but you played a hand fetishist. Because that's the only explanation I have for his overemphasis on hands. Why they're thumb-thumbs. Why there's a sexy thumb-thumb. Why he sits on a chair that's so impractical that only he can sit on it. Minion can't sit on it. Minion doesn't nearly have enough homosexual undertones to sit on it. Because let's be honest. And I'm gay, so I can say that. Let's be honest.
For some reason, one of my notes about the costume design is I hate that freaking choker.
The choker on the mom?
Yeah, for some reason, something about it
so
just makes
90s.
me deeply mad.
It
aggravates me.
Here's the thing. It's got like these little like details on the it's a very plain choker mostly. A very thin black choker with like this little bits of green right in the middle. So it looks like some sort of gadget because a lot of the other gadgets look like just normal things with like weird things on them. And that's how we're going to describe this.
Don't say anything about the
Wait, no, I'm getting distracted because I pulled up Alan Cumming, Alan Cumming's, little side bit of information when you Google his name says that his spouse is Grant Schaefer twice. He got married to him apparently in 2012, but also married to him from 2007 to 2012. And I'm deeply curious as to why.
No, it's because of actual legalization of gay marriage in the U.S.
Oh, so he got married. Wait, hold on. Wait, what? Okay, so when you click on the name of his husband, Grant Schaefer, the main picture for him is a picture of Alan Cumming. So I was deeply confused as to why he married a man who looks exactly like him.
He looks like him, but younger.
But because it's not. He looks like I'm looking at an actual picture of Alan Schaefer. And he looks nothing.
Grant Schaefer?
Schaefer.
They have become one person now.
Wait, the description on this picture in Google Images is Grant Schaefer bio reveals from birthday and age to gay husband Alan Cumming. Anyway. So now,
okay.
Little did you know this is actually an Alan Cumming podcast. All we talk about is Alan Cumming films with the pretext that they're about something else, but it's all about Alan Cumming.
What would we do next? I mean, obviously we're going to do Spy Kids 2 next, which is also an Alan Cumming film because he's the best character in it.
Even though he's only in it for...
one scene?
No, he's in it for like approximately 2 minutes.
And they were the best.
That's not like an understatement or an exaggeration or anything. He is in there for about a total of 2 minutes.
Best 2 minutes of the film.
Best 2 minutes of the film, except for the additional 2 minutes where it's Minion.
Or wait a minute. The ballet scene.
No, okay. We're talking about Spy Kids 1.
But going back So another part of production design, the miniature building.
Yes. I think this also ties in with the VFX.
They have a gorgeous miniature that they definitely built for the Floop set.
Yeah, that's composited in actually pretty well too. It looks like what they did is they built the miniature set over and have it around green screen, and then they composited it in over footage of an actual.
I do think it was in a little
cliffside.
tiny pool though.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked
because it would have looked fairly well with it. For some reason, every time I see it though, it reminds me of Luna Lovegood's house in Deathly Hallows,
a movie I have not seen,
which we will see eventually.
I have seen. Here's the thing about me and Harry Potter. I have seen every Harry Potter film except Deathly Hallows and
both Deathly Hallows. I thought you saw one of the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, except for half. I got them mixed up. That's how good of a Harry Potter fan I am. I've seen every single one except for Half-Blood Prince.
Okay.
And Deathly Hallows Part 1. That's right. I've seen Deathly Hallows Part 2 in theaters, no less. But I have not seen Deathly Hallows Part 1.
I mean, at least you know the conclusion.
I know how it ends. Well, I read the books.
Well, that's okay then.
Anyway, we're not talking about Harry Potter. This is not a Harry Potter podcast, although we will get to those films.
I think that the Floop, going back to the Floop.
Going back to the actual topic at hand.
The Floop set, I think that was the best green screen use in the entire film because it's the only one where I didn't get completely distracted by the fact that they were using a green screen and that it was very obvious. And they also weren't using Windows PC backgrounds for their for their shots.
Yeah, this film makes use of a lot of stock footage. And the
virtual room.
There wasn't actually as much VFX as you might expect from a Robert Rodriguez film. Especially Robert Rodriguez
of Shark Boy and Lava Girl fame.
Shark Boy, Lava Girl fame, and Spy Kids 3 fame.
Spy Kids 3 3D
fame. Yeah, so what was practical looked really good. For the most part, I liked a lot of their models. The art department was impressive with what they put together.
The art department was impressive, especially since it was actually just super tiny for a project of this size.
We watched through the credits, and the art department is like of the main art department, there was like one of each role.
Which honestly, like on most films, I'm gonna say that. I'm going to say on a film with, like, especially building sets, you would normally have a production design team of maybe 20 people at minimum.
Yeah, I mean...
This is pretty intense work for, like, I think that it was, like, 10 core... actually, not even 10, probably, like, 8 core people and then, like, 6 or maybe 9 carpenters to build everything.
Yeah, they had,
Yeah, they had
like a 5 set dressers, which is
not much when it comes to like the food, when you like get into like how much food they use, gross food by the way. And they have like
we'll talk about the food. Construction
set painters, there's a few. I mean, but like there's a lot of
set painters. Yeah.
Like you have to think about the Floop set. All the walls had to have been hand done because they're like textured in a certain way. So
there's some nepotism in the prop makers department because there's Debbie Bilski and Randy Bilski, and those are either a couple, brother and sister, or people who are not even remotely related.
He doesn't. Wait a minute. Can we just get to the fact that Robert Rodriguez does not know what nepotism is, and that it's a problem because of the fact that the whole second movie is about nepotism.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to that.
I do have, like, I think the makeup is okay on some people, and then some people the makeup is just, like...
They had a lot of carpenters.
Cheesy. Well, I mean, they built an entire set.
Yeah, it looked... A lot of the interiors looked like sets.
Yeah, I think that they had to have a lot of carpenters on the, just the Floop green screen room as itself, with the platforms and stuff like that. So I'm not shocked that there's a lot of carpenters. And then they also use carpenters to build the miniatures, too. And I feel like there's carpenters involved in some of the stuff for, like, the inventions.
Yeah.
And the jungle gym set, like, it makes sense.
Oh, they only had one...
I love the fact that somebody on it is called Ron Rock White.
There's some great names. I mean, you would expect, like, normally on, like, a big budget Hollywood film, it's some of these departments can be, like...
Think about this. I worked production design on commercials that have had bigger production design teams than this. Medical commercials have a billion.
Yeah.
a billion art department people for no apparent reason. But yeah, I've worked on, like, music videos and stuff like that where they have had bigger art departments than this. So
yeah, it's
shocking to me that this has happened.
Yeah. And with such a small crew and in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, he was cranking out movies one after the other at this point in his career.
Yeah, he is a very prolific filmmaker. But we'll talk about how prolific he is when we get to Spy Kids 2, because it gets wild. Robert Rodriguez did a lot on both of those movies. So the stock, I wasn't a huge fan of the stock footage that they used. They shot this on film. So, and you can tell it was shot on film with the grain and everything. Yeah. But there was, like, certain places where the film that they used was weirdly degraded. And I don't know if that was just the transfer that was used.
I wonder if it was an issue within color correction that distorted it and made it look.
Yeah, we'd have to see it on a different source, because sometimes, like, so as a small explanation, when you see a film on, say, Hulu or Netflix, that film was not originally digital. It was originally actually on tape. It was on film, and it had to be transferred. And so sometimes you can't always tell if you're looking at a digital copy of something that was originally shot in film. You can't always tell if some of the distortions and the quality issues are something that are from the original, or if it's just because the particular film or the particular tape that they used when creating the digital version was corrupted in some way. Yeah. Like there's in the scene where Junie and Carmen are on the playground, there's like this weird black bar that shows up that's definitely like a flaw in the film that shows up during one shot with Junie in it, and it's so strange to see because it's
they probably didn't have a lot of money to spend on actual film.
Yeah,
because film is people even don't realize that film is like
very expensive,
like blood money. You need to sell your kidney to get film for a movie.
Yeah, like even back then, because this was shot in I want to say around it was released in 2001.
So therefore, it probably was shot with it, like 2000. I want to say 1999 is probably when it was shot. It was released in 2001 because and the next one was 2002 and then it was 2003.
Yeah.
So
it was probably shot in around 1999 2000, and even then, film was kind of expensive. It wasn't as expensive as it is now because pretty much Kodak is pretty much the sole supplier of film these days.
Because film is dying out. It's not as
and so they can charge as much as they want.
Because the people who want to use it know they want to use it and they'll spend an arm and a leg and sell their children for it. Yeah.
Which is why you don't see a lot shot on film. It's actually
But going back to seeing the most authentic version of it, the only way for you to really see a film in its most authentic version is to see it in theaters.
Yeah.
In its original run.
Yeah. And we can't tell you. What we can tell you is that the stock footage that they used was crappy. The quality of the stock footage that they used was not very good at all, and it was clearly a lower resolution. Some of it was clearly a lower resolution than
I honestly would not be shocked if they actually bought it from Windows PC, because some of it I swear was my mom's computer background when I was growing up.
Yeah, like it looks like the film, I'm pretty sure it was shot 1920 by 1080. Mm-hmm. But it looks to me like some of the stock footage that they used was 720. So these are different resolutions. Like for example, when you hear the term 4K, that's a reference to a resolution. 4K resolution is 3840 by 2160 pixels. So it's like the number of pixels
that are being used across your screen.
Yeah. And most things these days, HD is 1920 by 1080p, and it's even back in 2000, Yeah, resolution is why, like, if you look at old episodes of a TV show from, like, say the 90s, if you look
at Seinfeld, it's like
it's like a box. It's a square box because the resolution that it was shot in is not the resolution that TVs are being played at now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see it mostly in, like, I feel like 90s sitcoms. It's the worst.
But anyway, that's beside the point. That's a fun little lesson on resolution.
But back to VFX. For some reason, the shot where she is, like, flying over the city and she's holding Judy gave me almost motion sickness with how jarring
at some point you could tell that they intentionally blew out as a technical term to refer to making the whites far too bright and overexposing. Mm-hmm. So there's a shot where they're in the sky. Carmen is holding onto Junie. She's got a jetpack on, and she doesn't have full control. And they're flying over a city, and she zooms in from the sky above. And the sun, they positioned the sun, like, directly behind her, so you couldn't really see it. And I think the reason why they did that, we actually watched these with a animation and VFX major roommate of ours, and she was like, you could tell they blew that out so you couldn't see how bad it was, because it was bad. There was, like, if you looked at the CGI of the ground below them, it actually changes how close they are to the ground, but not in a way that makes sense. Like, they're suddenly,
it made me feel like almost, like, it was hard for me to even pay attention to how awful it was because of the fact that it kept making me feel, like, almost ill.
Like, they're falling, and they look like they're just about to hit the ground, and then she manages to zoom back up, and they're suddenly, like, when she makes the turn to keep them from falling, like Junie's falling, and when she finally catches him, he's not as close to the ground as he was before.
Yes.
Even though he was falling, so he should be closer to the ground, and it was bizarre.
Honestly, that whole sequence is bizarre, and especially the ending of that sequence where they just, like, go up to a random couple and, like, just like grab their arm, and like it was like,
and they just accepted it, like, oh, like, these two strange children.
Like, they welcome to the trolley. I'm gonna pat your head.
Where we're on what appears to be a date right in the middle of the day, because they were dressed in formal wear. They looked like they were going to prom. Yeah, he was, like, straight up wearing a tux or something.
And she was wearing, like, a dress.
And they were, like, drinking champagne or some shit.
Like, maybe it was a wedding.
Yeah, like,
I feel like a lot of weddings are on trolley, but he's wearing a suit, so it just is okay. Like, none of this makes quite sense.
I do like the fact that they do the quick change like their parents. Yeah. They're not drinking champagne. The
man is wearing she's holding a flower.
She's holding a rose, and she looks like she's in an evening gown. Oh, and they shot this at Magic Hour.
They shot a lot of it. They do a lot of shooting at Magic Hour, I feel like, in both films.
Always work.
And it also is weird on your production schedule, too.
Yeah. Okay, so Magic Hour, just as a reference, is there's 2 magic hours in the day, and it's like
when the sun is out, it's a good spot for, like,
for shooting, because when you're shooting outside,
it basically gives the effect of it being, like, a very warm
and dreamy, and because it's like
normally if you see a romance scene of people in a, like, field, it's dotted golden hour.
It's like a 2 hours before sunset, and, like,
2 hours. Golden hour in the morning is, like, 4 to, like, 6 a.m., I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, like, if you're shooting at golden hour, your call time to wake up in the morning is gonna be 3 in the morning.
It's gonna be 3 in the morning.
And it's...
Actually, if you're shooting at all, your call time is gonna be 3 in the morning. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I've had 3 a.m. call times.
I've had call times ranging from 3 a.m. to call times at, like, midnight.
Yeah.
So...
Fun
things.
Yeah, and so I don't know if it quite works for them to shoot at golden hour the way that they did. Like, the film is very much set in a child's mind, and so it's very, like, wonderful. But, like, this scene is, like, an intense chase scene. Why is it shot at this hour?
I think it's just a Robert Rodriguez thing. He likes things to be very warm, and that, therefore,
he likes
shooting
things to
at
be
golden
a
hour
too
makes
warm.
sense. But the thing is, like, here's like the real issue to me though is that this is that golden hour, but then the scene there's a scene pretty close after it that is shot like in a park, and it's like obviously after golden hour, but if they shot
no, this looks like golden hour towards the end of the day.
No, but I'm saying that the scene immediately after this is not at golden hour. They're at like the park, and it's like very bright and sunny day.
Yeah, it's like the middle of the day.
And so therefore it doesn't quite make sense of why this is golden hour nearing the end of the day, but the stuff in the park is like obviously supposed to be is like normally earlier.
So yeah, this is and you can tell in between cuts that it's different times of the day.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but that's like...
Oh, I also love the definite use of a bounce on her face here.
Yeah.
Because they shot that scene in the shade, and like the light source, the strongest bit of light is behind them, so they use a bounce, which is basically this big circle of reflective material that you can cover in like a silver reflective material, or it's white, or
they just use a giant board of white.
Yeah, that also works, but I think they used a gold.
They definitely use a gold I think he primarily only uses gold reflectors because of the fact that he just likes everything to look very warm.
Yeah,
especially in this film.
So you can tell that it's a reflector because your light source is behind you, and their face is generally in shadow, but the shadows are not nearly as stark as all the shadows on their clothes or any other part of them, and that's because the bounce really just gets you light right on a specific area of the face, so it softens those shadows and makes the face more visible. Mm-hmm. That's not really a critique of it, it's just saying that that's what they're doing. And you can also tell because the light source is like coming from below a little bit.
Yeah. I wonder, I feel like the shooting schedule of this had been really intense because of the amount of children in it.
Yeah.
They must have been shooting like only maybe 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Which would explain why they actually were able to get golden hour so often.
Yeah. Yeah, because children, there's a lot of limitations on shooting with children because of child labor laws, and which is often why you see shows and movies where like teenagers are played by people who are in their 20s and 30s.
But if you want to like think about it, like the Lizzie McGuire movie, almost every single scene where you don't see her actual face is not Lizzie McGuire.
And we know that for a fact.
We've met the director, and he pointed out every single time it wasn't Lizzie McGuire, which is like most of the movie.
He came to our university, and he did a screening of Lizzie McGuire.
He was supposed to do a Q&A, but he ended up doing a screening and then basically just like ruining the entire movie for us.
And be like, that's not Lizzie.
That's not Lizzie. That's not even Italy.
That's the backlot in California. Anyway, those are fun things that happen. So yeah, the coloring on this film was garbage.
The mother looked both orange and sick at the same time somehow, and I just don't know how that happened. It looked like they did a lot of orange, but they also pumped up greens.
Yes, that was the strangest thing. The green
I've never heard of anybody doing that.
Here's from somebody who's dabbled in coloring a little bit. Here's what I feel like happened. Mm-hmm. They bumped up the saturation.
Oh, yeah.
They bumped up the saturation, but that sometimes makes skin tones look very... You have to be careful with that because if there's too much warmth in your color palette and in your lights and everything, you have to be careful about doing that because it can make people look very orange. Like lighter skinned people look very orange. And yeah. I think the mother is supposed to also be Latina,
but the actress is definitely not. And I don't know.
Well, she might be.
I'm not quite sure, but if she is, she's very light skinned.
Yeah, she's a white Latina.
She's
Latina.
Very affected by how they chose to light this.
Yeah.
Even in scenes where there's nobody else there besides her.
Yeah, sometimes it almost looks like they forgot to white balance, but you know that they didn't forget to white balance because the whites are okay. It's just...
I love the fact that they both got top billing even though they were in less of the film.
She's Italian.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, no, the it's just poorly done on her, and there's moments where it's also bad on the kids.
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't as bad on, like, Alan Cumming and them because they were kind of...
Alan Cumming is immune to all damage.
But they were all done with all white people in the shot.
Yeah, and a lot of these kids are lighter skinned. The skin tones look very orange in general, but not so orange that it's, like, that distracting. It's more distracting to us because we look at things like that and we're pretentious.
I think
it's green, not as bad as Spy Kids 2.
I think the green emphasizes how bad it is.
Yeah. That's another thing with color theory is it's not just the colors natively, it's also what colors are next to them can affect. That's why there was the whole thing with the dress. It was people's browsers and what colors were around them affected whether you saw black and blue or white and gold.
It can also be affected by what you see right before you see it too.
Yes.
So it's everything surrounding it matters.
And they definitely bumped up the greens in post. The color correction, another complaint I have about it is that it is very inconsistent. And the playground scene, there is a shot where you can tell, like, where when it cuts back to Junie on being tormented on the what is that called?
Merry-go-round?
It's not a merry-go-round because there's no horses on it. It's not mechanical. It's
I didn't have a childhood, so
it's like a spinny thing. The spinny thing, the big spinny thing. When he's on that thing, when it cuts from, it shows Carmen being lifted up by Robo Junie, and then it cuts to actual Junie being tormented by Robo Carmen.
Wait a minute, did your playground have one of those?
I didn't have a playground.
Because every playground I saw didn't have one of those. I think they were deemed too dangerous.
That they could get pretty dangerous. But anyway, so it cuts back and you can tell that the color treatment is completely different because it's not as oversaturated. So it looks like it's from a different film. It looks a lot flatter.
I mean, there's like full scenes that feel like they're from different films, in my opinion.
Yeah, the color correction's very inconsistent.
But even just shooting styles felt like they were from different films.
Well, I think that's because the difference between A-Team and B-Team.
Yeah, I think A-Team was definitely way more skilled, and I think that most of them were used on the Floop set.
Yeah, and with the parents.
I even think that I just think that the flashbacks were all done, and I think the location shoots, like the exteriors, were all done by B-Team, and then A-Team was all interiors.
Yeah, and I think that could be because they were shot in different cities.
I think the house itself is a set.
Yeah.
And it was in the same place wherever Floop's is.
Yeah, it feels like a set.
Because that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
For them to do it that way, because even the walls are similar, in my opinion, to
yes.
Like the
one thing I want to say about Floop's castle that I didn't mention before, and it's a little detail that I love, is it really reflects his inner mind of being sort of like a child, where everything is scaled to suit a child much more than it is an adult. When you see the parents walking through it, they look strangely big. All the paintings are hung at a height that it suits children better than it does adults, and things like that. And
yeah.
The
like
production...
Antonio Banderas, who is not a tall man by any means, looks like he's about to hit his head going through the corridors sometimes.
Yeah, and also weirdly hunched over. That's a different detail. But what I didn't like... So I liked the way that the production design and the set design reflected that. I didn't like some of the ways that the props in particular chose to reflect Floop's childlike nature. For example, the food.
The food in general, even at the, like, pig intestines.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the food in this film.
I've eaten intestines, not pig intestines, because I don't eat pigs. But I've had intestines before. Not awful, but the way that they present them is gross, because it's just like a giant bowl of intestines.
Intestines, when you prepare them properly, are cut up and they look like a cut of meat. They look almost like a small.
I've had intestines prepared like that before, like the long ones, but you don't have just like a giant bowl of it.
And they're like all flippy floppy.
And they don't look seasoned or anything. They just look like a pile of intestines.
So Michelle, like all that food looks gross, and then the soup that they're supposedly eating in Floop's castle, you can tell that it's not edible. I think it's pain, and you could tell because Alan Cumming brings the spoon to his lips multiple times, but does not take a single sip.
They cut to behind him right before he's supposed to like be taking
or he'll stop to talk right before he takes a sip. It doesn't even touch his lips.
Also, the impracticality of all of the utensils and like the plates
the plate had springs underneath it,
and there's like the one that is like right next to Antonio Banderas. So
was distracting.
So for some reason they like have it just right in the foreground of a shot of everybody at the table. And like I'm just like, why is it bouncing?
It's moving, which was very distracting element to have in the foreground, and I don't think was good positioning.
But I also was like, the spoons just like did not look like you would want to use them.
They looked like serving spoons too.
They looked like
they were so big.
They looked like weird serving spoons. Like I feel like there were salad serving spoons.
Now here's a deep conspiracy that I want to throw your way. The only food in the film that looks delicious and edible is when they are in the safe house and she rehydrates the packet of American food and it rehydrates into a McDonald's meal.
But they also...
And that is the only appetizing food. And here's my deep theory. They intentionally made the rest of the food look really gross to make the McDonald's food look really good.
I mean, they had that chicken that the Tom Cruise wannabes were all
fascinated by. Yeah. I love the Tom Cruise fuckers.
Cereal.
Yeah, Floop cereal. Well, you don't really see Floop cereal.
We just see the box of Floop cereal, I guess.
You just see the box of Floop cereal. Okay,
which is like
why
Fruit Loops, I guess.
Why is this man bothering with evil world domination plans when he's got a fairly successful children's TV show?
Fairly successful? He's the second best in the world.
But only the second best.
And he has a great distribution deal at the time because he was selling things like he was Doc McStuffins.
Yeah, he was selling things like he was Doc McStuffins. Sure,
I know Doc McStuffins sells very well because my niece owned every single piece of Doc McStuffins merch.
And every small child that age and that gender that I have encountered owns Doc McStuffins.
So like this, he was he was like Disney level.
Sure, I would say his figures were not very high quality. If you look at them, they don't look anything like him, and they look like they're melting, actively melting. That was the one thing.
They look like the wrestling figures. Okay, so I was not a normal girl, as my mom calls me, and I had a lot of wrestling figures growing up, and they kind of remind me of that.
Yeah, they were like poorly sculpted plastic. You could tell that they were handmade.
I used to make my wrestling dolls marry each other.
Well, that's the agenda right there.
So
they should add that
if The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin ever meet, they married each other in Barry's dream house, just so they know.
Just so that I'm pretty sure Stone Cold Steve Austin, if I can pronounce his name. I can pronounce all these other names, but Stone Cold Steve Austin, he flutes me.
Yeah.
Anyway, change your name, man. It's unpronounceable by the general English-speaking public, and by that I mean me. The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, on the other hand, just rolls off the tongue.
He's fabulous, and he's like pretty high up there on Twitter.
He's pretty well. That of course
Instagram.
Means everything. Yeah. What were we talking about?
We went to how awful the food is, and how the figures, and like how like Floop's place in this world, and why is he a villain? Like
why is he a villain?
There's no point.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that he just wanted to make the whole.
He looks fabulous.
I feel like all of his films start with like an idea, like one idea. And he's
Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think he just goes, I want to film about a children's toy, blah blah blah, or something, or like miniature animals, or Shark Boy and Lava Girl. That's
JJ, I feel like the impetus for this film was, what if there were spies who were children, and not what if a popular maker of a TV show for children was also secretly an evil mastermind?
I'm saying that it's like he has like one or two like dreams, and he's like, well, that's what I'm gonna make the entire thing about.
He's obsessed with dreams, so possibly, yes.
I feel like that's what happened.
Yeah.
I do want to say that all the flashback scenes were
interesting.
Okay. Especially that weird
Okay, I think we should talk about the wedding scene.
No, I'm not gonna. Before we get into the wedding scene, we have to talk about the fact that one other flashback scene, the biggest flashback scene in the film, does not look anything like that scene. And it's the one where he has to destroy the brain and he doesn't.
Yes.
And he uses a walnut. Because, like, where did he get the walnut?
And
Don't
nobody
know, but
noticed.
okay.
And nobody noticed.
Nobody noticed. I guess somebody figured it out at the end because they realized that he didn't destroy the walnut. He didn't destroy the brain because they were trying to find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that flashback scene looked wildly different than the other flashback scene.
Yeah, and I feel like because it's very white. There's a lot of white. I wonder if they had a bit different dresser because there was a lot of white.
It looked very sterile.
Yeah,
which made
sterile,
sense, I guess.
And clinical, which I think makes sense. But I think it could also be like a subtle indication because Minion was also in all white, like a connection between Minion, like he was part of that team. Because when they first show that flashback scene, you don't know that Minion's secretly the big villain behind everything. Mm-hmm. And you also don't know that he used to work for the OSS.
Yeah. Honestly, the OSS should hire, like, should screen these people better because all the villains are like OSS members.
Yeah, all the villains turn out to be OSS, and including the dad in a strange way because had he not done that, had he just destroyed the third brain,
yeah, he
would have been good. And the fact that they didn't track Minion or whatever the hell his real name was, they mention it only once.
It's not.
It was like Carl or something.
He's contractually obligated to always be called something with an M. Minion, Monk.
That's got to be what it is. That just
he likes the M's. It's his thing.
It's his thing.
It's his brand.
I like how we haven't bothered to look up what his name actually is.
He's just Monk to me. And
he's just Monk.
It is very scary that as we do this, the screen is just his face staring at us intensely.
It is.
And it's upsetting.
Because we have the movie up in the background, in front of us. So let's talk about the wedding scene. Because I feel like that demonstrates a lot of the best and worst aspects of the film. From a story perspective, I think the wedding scene is like the whole like flashback story that the mom tells is great. It's well paced. It was
a little cheesy,
but it was
like made sense. I feel like some of it might have been done bigger than it actually probably was.
Yeah, it was the right kind of cheesy. It felt like a story. Like it felt like you were looking at Carmen and Judy's imagination of
what this was.
I
love the fact that she punches the swan, but I didn't like the editing or the shooting of that part.
Yeah, it was weird. Okay, so she goes to punch the swan, and when it cuts in to a close-up of the fist actually hitting the swan, it goes in from a different angle from it was being shot. So when you cut into something, so say you are, like for her, the camera was behind her. It was kind of over her shoulder. You see her on the left side of the screen. Mm-hmm. And the swan on the right side of the screen. And she goes to punch it. And you see the start of that motion. And then it cuts in. And usually you're supposed to cut in down the barrel. So when you do a close-up, you're basically moving the camera just forward. It's like a easy mistake to make because the camera didn't actually move very much.
Yeah.
Over to the left.
Yeah, it was just a little bit.
It was just a little bit, but everything. It was enough that that the angle kind of changed,
and it was just distracting, and then it just doesn't get better because I think that the beginning of it. Bear in mind, like, there's some, like, cheesy wigs and, like,
yeah. But I
the
feel
heart-shaped box, and, like, I think the Paris whole thing was a little cheesy, but, like,
I liked it.
It worked. I liked how they showed the progression of time through it by having her hair change.
Yes.
Like, I enjoyed those things, but the wedding scene, the editing specifically around just the part where they're getting married.
Oof.
They use crossfades. Holy crossfades. Don't use crossfades.
Okay, crossfades can be used, but they should only be used sparingly.
And with incredible importance. Okay, so for reference, like in recent years, they kind of use crossfades in The Favorite when they overlap the faces and then the bunnies.
Mm-hmm.
It's a type of crossfade. It's a little bit more artistically used, but it's technically a crossfade of different things overlapping the one face. But it's not a cut technically.
Yeah.
But it is a crossfade. And so that was artistically done and it's thought out and it has very significant importance to the storyline.
Yeah, you have to be very careful.
No reason.
Because
except for being there and being different.
Here's the thing: with crossfades, you're juxtaposing two images essentially, and if those two images, it doesn't give you a deeper meaning by juxtaposing them, then you shouldn't do it.
And it's even weirder because it's her face. Again,
it's like, and it wasn't like a careful composition of the crossfade either. It was like very haphazardly, his face kind of covering her face as it's crossfading over.
No, it actually went from her face to both of their faces.
Yeah.
I almost would have it would have almost been okay. Like I wouldn't have said yes, definitely do a crossfade because I as a person just don't like crossfades. If it crossfade from her face to his face and then back to her face and then
to kind of show as a union type idea.
Yeah, as opposed to like doing it from her face to like their faces together.
Yeah. It just
felt messy.
Yeah.
It felt almost like they didn't have enough things to cut to, so they just were like, okay, we'll just do it like this.
Yeah, I mean the production design, the editing wasn't great, and the coloring wasn't great.
I love the wedding cake.
I love the wedding cake.
Some people say they don't like the dress that we were watching it with. I enjoyed the dress. I think it made sense for her. I like the fact that it was practical for running. It was specifically designed for that. But it didn't break character completely and put her in like pants because she is like supposed to.
She is a feminine type woman.
And she would get married in a dress, but it was equipped for running. And I like the cross necklace. Like it was very well put together.
Yeah.
It made sense. It made sense for the time period in which they would have been getting married, which had been in like the early 90s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it all together went very well. I really, really adore the cake. I really like when they use non-white wedding cakes and things.
Yeah, I also liked how the subtle details, like, they got the priest's vestments correct, which is something that I don't normally see in film. Like, I was raised Catholic, and I've been to hella Catholic weddings. And so the particular vestments that he was wearing were correct for a wedding, because a lot of priests have like a very specific vestment that they wear. I've sometimes seen them wear like more plain stuff, although I don't think those were necessarily Catholic weddings. It's just blah. But anyway, on the Catholic weddings that I have been to, they do wear that sash across that has those different colors. That is traditional for
I've
that.
only been to a gay Catholic wedding, and I feel like they did not.
They probably were not following.
It was rainbow thingy around him, so
that's a big mood.
It is. But
I also
the one thing about the priest I really did like is I like the fact that after they escape, they do cut back to the priest,
and he's crossing himself, which reminds me of this time when I was in mass as a child.
But it was a gorgeous shot too. It was like from below of him.
Beautiful.
It was very, very.
And it was funny.
It might have been like the best shot in the film.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I don't like the flashbacks. I don't think the flashback is the best scene in the film, but I think that is
that is like the best little moment in the film. And what was so funny, it's so like the idea of him like crossing himself and blessing them as they're going is so fucking Catholic. I remember when I was in mass as a child once, there was this old guy who like passed out. He had like a stroke or something in the middle of mass, and so they had to call in an ambulance, obviously, an EMT. And as the EMTs are coming in, the mass got like paused for this. The priest comes over and performs final rites on this old guy just in case he dies. And it's like the final rites and a blessing on him while the EMTs are coming in to check up on him and take him away.
So I've seen last rites a lot as somebody who's been in the hospital a lot. So I can imagine this happening for some reason.
It's a very Catholic thing to be sending people off while continuing to bless them. It's very Catholic.
I just really enjoy it. I feel like I feel like he inserted that into the film because he grew up Catholic and he doesn't see enough Catholic stuff in film, so he just inserted it. I think it was a very self-inserted thing.
Yeah.
But it was fun. And
I also liked the fact that their parachutes were heart-shaped. I thought that was very funny.
I think it ties in with the fact that the ring box is also a heart-shaped too.
Yeah, and the fact that they had just married on their getaway boat was so funny.
I love the fact that it's kind of implied that they knew they were gonna have to make a getaway, or that this was just gonna be the exit that they were planning.
Yeah, like
the exit was that they were planning was to like deploy this. So that's interesting, and says a lot about their characters.
Yep. That was a lot of fun. I also like the little cameo of Machete at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I
think the whole every scene with. I think he
steals the show. Well, him, Alan Cumming, and the guy who plays Monk, Monk Man.
I think they stole the show. They had the best well-written scenes, I think. But can we please talk about the fact that Machete is Tony Stark and a war criminal?
Yeah, Machete is a war criminal who's selling weapons to Syria. Like, you see on the roof of his shop, there's a big crate that's labeled to Syria. And he's like, and he explicitly says, yeah, I sell weapons to both sides. And we both, when we heard him say that, we're like, Machete is a war criminal.
Oh my gosh, Machete is a war criminal.
He's Tony Stark.
Yeah, you are very opinionated about Tony Stark, and I'm just like, yeah, Tony Stark, not my favorite. But you're very opinionated.
This is he's Latino Tony Stark,
which is very interesting. I want to do a deep dive into his character. We
should do the Machete films.
Do you know what I was wondering? Because his name is so Machete, do you think that, like, because these films take place in the same universe, do you by any chance think that he's also Machete kills in this universe? That, like, when he's not with the kids and being a good uncle, he's, like, you know...
Machete?
Yeah. Yeah. Could that be happening? Because that's, like, my headcanon for some reason.
Because it seems like in this universe, all he does is
I feel like he has to have life outside of this, right?
He's just the Q of this universe. Also, the green screen in that entire like story sequence was so bad.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be good.
Yeah, the green screen in this film in general is very obvious.
This is obviously B team, because it's exteriors, and you can tell. I feel like they shot this at the same location they shot the exterior zoom in of Carmen.
Yeah, that was another thing. The house, their actual house, is clearly a CGI model and not a real model, and it looks so bad. And I don't know why they didn't just make a model. I don't know if they ran out of time before production to do it.
Yeah.
Or what was up with that. Or if just because of the shot that they were planning, they decided, oh, let's just make it all CGI because it is going to be partially CGI because they're moving in. Because the start of the film is this shot of the house. It's not
smooth either. Like,
and it is jittery.
When you watch it, you can see it like little.
You can see it jitter.
Little. Whoever was the operator was.
Well, not the opera. It was the CGI artist.
No, I was talking about the camera movements are not smooth.
Oh yeah, well those are also not smooth sometimes.
I think particularly in that scene, it's the most jarring. Like just going up to the house, I felt like that was. It really, like, was... maybe it's just because it's the first shot that it was just, like, wow. But it just... I think they used a jib, and I think it was not a good place to use a jib, because I think they definitely had to keep the ocean is real, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Look into that. Because I know that the house itself was CGI.
Yeah.
And they probably just built the window and around the window.
And I feel like they had to use a jib to get...
Yeah.
To zoom into her. And which is weird because of the fact that in some scenes they just use a weird zoom thing where they like zoom in tiny amounts.
Yeah, where they either like it looks like they sped up the zoom.
Yeah.
In a weird way. It's a very stylistic thing and it looks strange.
In some scenes it's like extremely like noticeable and it will take you out, but some parts of it just flows into it almost, and
like some of the camera movements, some of the I liked some of the shot choices.
I like some of the shot choices when it came to like, as I said before, I really think that the Floop set got the most work put into it by the crew and in general.
Yeah.
And I think that the shots really, it shows that those are way better done.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that kind of wraps things up. So this movie held up surprisingly well. I was going into it, I was expecting as an adult to think this film wasn't very good, but I actually enjoyed it.
Because honestly, most of the issues are very technical. Like,
Yeah.
story-wise, it's a very strong story-wise. It's just technical things. And honestly, some of that might have been because they were rushed. Some of it could have been because of budgetary issues.
Yeah, it was only I was actually shocked that the budget was as big as it was.
Yeah, I did not. And I feel like some of the budget went to, like, the people they hired.
Yes. They hired some big now. Like, a lot of the budget might have just gone to getting George Clooney as a cameo at the end.
George Clooney. Alan Cumming was pretty big already.
Yeah.
This was right when he was starting to get into...
Antonio Banderas was extremely popular at this time.
Yeah, even with his good relationship with them, it was that... And also, he was probably paying Michelle pretty well because he knows them.
Yeah.
The only reason he got away with it, I feel like, is because he did take on certain crew positions that normally would have paid more. Like, he was editing this, didn't he edit it, or did he co-edit?
I'm pretty sure on this one,
he also spent a lot of money getting Skywalker
films. Yeah,
he
had Skywalker films. Yeah, the sound is like one of my more areas of expertise. The sound on this was not good. The mix was not good. But the mix on the, like, there was quite a few times where the dialogue was too quiet. The actual quality of the recording was fine. It was just the mixing and post that wasn't very good. And I also...
The score was interesting, though.
The score was good, though.
But the only issue I have with it is that they obviously couldn't buy a lot of pieces of the score, so therefore they reused certain...
Yeah, they had the score recorded and mixed at Skywalker Sound, which is one of the best places to have your score mixed,
because
and recorded,
because
it's Skywalker Sound. And they got Danny Elfman to write a lot of the music, and you can really tell because it's not like the Floop theme is so Danny Elfman,
which is better in the credit sequence than it is
actually in the film. And this is why, because Skywalker Sound mixed the music. The music sounds great, but the problem is they took the music and then put it into the film and then mixed the music with the dialogue and the sound effects and the background noise.
Especially
poorly.
The dialogue, especially I feel like that was, because I feel like that the Floop theme song was actually like probably the best song in the film, and it kind of got destroyed by the Floop in the background.
Yeah. So in the sequence where we see Floop recording his show in the virtual room, you can barely even hear. You can't really make out very well what Floop is singing, which is strange to me because in the ending credit scene, you could very clearly make out what he was saying. But also there was the Flooped, the Floopy or whatever, the Foogalies in the background were making noises, and things like that.
Yeah.
And the sound, and because of the combination of the music and the sound effects, it distracted the ear from Alan Cummings singing and made it very hard to hear. Yeah. So that could have been it.
Yeah. It holds up, and honestly, if the job of the film was to sell me McDonald's, it did, because it looks delicious. I definitely wanted to buy
a McDonald's
fries
meal, yeah,
afterwards, and also I feel like that's just I also feel like that whole scene was a big suspend your disbelief, like the food magically appearing thing.
Yeah. When it happened, I was like, how
My roommate was like, "Oh, this is how they do that," and I'm like, "No, I know how they do that, but why?"
I know how they did that on set, but I'm wondering within the logic of the film how that happened. Because she opens the cupboards and opens the fridge and nothing's there, and then there's like this weird sound effect, and then she opens the cupboards again and opens the fridge again, and they're now stocked with stuff
and money.
And I'm like,
they have money,
and there's that's less confusing. Because,
but there's just a magically appearing money. I want to know how that happened.
I want to get in on that. How do I get magically appearing money? So yeah, I was very, it was not nearly as terrifying as an adult to watch than as a child. I was still grossed out by the food. I was grossed out by the food when I was a child, and I'm still grossed out by the food now.
I also feel like they couldn't afford Antonio Banderas a lot because that's why they did not have him in a Foogly suit. It was just the hand.
It was definitely just the hand. And it was interesting to see some of the things that I was like, yeah, when I was a child, I just bought this. Like, I believed it, on a lot of things. And as an adult, it's like, oh, I can kind of see the logic flaws in that. It was also funny because I could just, like, scenes and be like, oh, I remember this, like the scene where he's watching Floop's Fooglies in the car, and the specific line at the end where the kids are tossing up all the villains and throwing them around, and Minion goes, it just goes in one ear and out the other. I remember that line.
The squeaky voice they give him at the end after they switch him. Yes. What's happening.
Yes, I remembered that. I misremembered the film though because I thought Floop got transformed. I was waiting for Floop to get transformed, and then he didn't. And I was like, oh, Minion got transformed instead. That's what it was.
But here's the thing. I feel like this is like, you have to suspend your disbelief, just like you have to suspend your disbelief when you watch films like Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
And Willy Wonka's still a good movie, like, the original one.
The original one, not the one
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Johnny Depp, whatever happened there. But you kind of have to just suspend your disbelief just enough to, like, realize, like, okay, this can exist in this world.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it held up shockingly well to me. And some of the effects held up better than I thought that they would.
Like the thumb thumbs.
They don't hold up that well.
I think the best things were the thumb thumbs, honestly.
The thumb thumbs. I liked a lot of the character animation on the thumb thumbs. It was very fun. I liked the way that there was the one thumb that was always more clumsy than the others. I thought that was a very fun thing. I liked the idea of adding that little bit of extra character to these otherwise faceless, actually faceless minions.
The one thing that really kind of disturbed me, though, was the fact, what didn't even disturb me, it was just like, I was confused by, was why did they not even try to disguise Donovan? Like, it was very obvious that was him just with his mouth stretched. Whereas all the other Fooglies are, like, completely different.
Yeah.
Like, they look like they're different creatures from a different planet, whereas, like, he looks like he's just, like, his face is stretched out.
I guess it's because
they needed Antonio Banderas to be able to spot him.
While he's trying to drive the car and then almost run over the fucking,
that poor lady.
The crossing guard.
Yeah.
That's another thing. I liked how sometimes I'd be like, hey, but what about this? And then the film would answer my question.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't, like, one of my pet peeves in films is when there's a driving scene and the actors are looking at everything but the road. Because here's the thing, when they're shooting driving scenes,
hey, you're not Baby Driver.
General you're not Baby Driver. General practice is, and this is required also by unions, is you cannot actually make an actor drive because they are supposed to be acting at the same time, and they cannot safely drive and act at the same time. So anytime you see an actor in a car driving, what's actually happening is that their car has been hitched to a different vehicle, and that vehicle is, like, pulling the car along.
Or they're using a green screen on a lot.
Or they're using
less likely now, but it was more used before. Or they had this thing, like, back in the day when they just had, like, a sliding picture that went around and around in a circle behind them.
And sometimes it's like a remotely driven car, but that's usually more for stunts and effects.
Yeah, that's not as widely used, and also it's more expensive to
It's a lot more expensive because
So
you have to like specially outfit the car.
I think that they use that a few times in things like Fast and the Furious, so I don't think it's just like general use.
Yeah. So it shockingly held up. I thought it was a pretty good kids flick, worth watching.
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely one of the ones that people are gonna like. It holds up enough, especially if you're gonna show it to your kids.
Yeah, they're gonna buy it.
Yeah, like kids are gonna definitely fall for it because it makes kids logic sense.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll buy the CGI quite as well because kids these days are more used to better CGI.
Yeah,
than we were when we were kids.
Definitely, but
yeah. So that kind of wraps up our first episode, I suppose.
Yeah, and then we'll be doing Spy Kids 2
next week. We've got, just for some housekeeping, we've got an email, a Twitter, and a YouTube. Our email, if you want to ask us questions or make recommendations or just send us general fan mail, our email is, let me pull it up, filmmatespodcast@gmail.com. That is FILMMATESPODCAST@gmail.com. And our Twitter is also @filmmatespodcast. And our YouTube will be Filmmates Podcast as well. So yeah, next week is Spy Kids 2. Thanks for tuning in and listening to us and hearing to us rant and ruin films. Hope you stick around and hear what we got to say about Spy Kids 2 next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.